Hi, I'm Mary Kopczynski, the CEO of RegAlytics, and I'm here to give you an update on this week's 21,325 regulatory alerts. For the record, it's Tuesday. I don't drop the video until Wednesdays, but I do record them on what I call TV Tuesday, and today is Election Day. So I have no idea what's going to happen. I do have a strong opinion about which candidate I support, but you know what? There's a part of me that would actually prefer my hated candidate to win by a landslide. And what is more likely to happen, which is yet another drawn-out election year where we don't know the results for quite some time. In the 2020 election, voting was on Tuesday, but no one got the results until Pennsylvania was called on Saturday. And it makes me look back to some of my earlier memories when watching election night was almost fun, like seeing a game played and finding out which team won and which team lost, knowing that either way the country would be fine. But with this vitriol and this 50-50 split, it's just been a long time. Even going back to Bush v. Gore and the hanging chads, been a long time since we had a normal, boring, humdrum election night. So to all of you, I say I am here. I will be here hell or high water to let you know what our government is doing. But you know what? I don't want to delve into all of the stressful topics like abortion alerts or election alerts that happened this week. This week, I want to talk about something completely different. So, the regulator of the week is Brazil. Why Brazil? Well, in my set feeds on RegAlytics, I do occasionally have false positives, and sometimes I use the RegAlytics filtration system to eliminate content that isn't relevant to what I'm focused on, but sometimes I keep it in because it's interesting. For example, on my diversity and inclusion feed, one of the terms I include is race. And that means that sometimes I get information on horse races. And I could easily eliminate horse, but I don't because I actually find those rare horse racing alerts super interesting. But in this case, Brazil popped up in a few of my feeds. So first of all, my tribal alerts feed, which is typically focused on tribal nations in the United States, but the Brazil Ministry of Culture is focusing heavily on mapping the over 600 different cultural identities in Brazil to strengthen local culture and democratize access to cultural policies. The secretary of this group said, "We need to listen to the voices of this deep Brazil from the outskirts and the remote corners to translate their realities into transformative cultural actions." The Ministry of Communications of Brazil is also focused on this, noting that last week they gave 14 computer notebooks to the Kalunga Quilombo community. The donation precedes the first national holiday for Black Consciousness Day on November 20th, symbolizing the Brazilian government's commitment to addressing historical injustices faced by the Black population. The program repurposes outdated computers and provides essential technology for education and social services. The second place Brazil popped up in my feed was in relation to sports betting. The Brazilian Ministry of Sports is leading efforts to regulate sports betting and protect the integrity of competitions. And on October 29th, the agency signed an agreement with monitoring companies to combat disorder in the betting market. This was a response to the 2018 law that mandated regulation within 4 years. This newly established department will work alongside the Ministry of Finance to prevent match fixing and enhance oversight of betting licenses. I just always find it interesting to learn what other countries do because often they're dealing with similar issues and they have a different way of going about it. For example, there's no U.S. federal agency for sports. There are private clubs like the NFL or the NBA, but unlike FINRA or other private agencies, there's no federal oversight whatsoever, except, strangely, horse racing, which rules have to be reviewed by the SEC. Go figure. The topic of the week is social media. It's been coming up lately, usually in relation to mass scraping of social media sites for AI models. I actually mentioned this briefly last week because of an alert I saw from Canada, But now I'm understanding how global this is. This week, both the New Zealand Office of the Privacy Commissioner and the Office of the Australian Information Commission pushed the issue. And when I saw the Australian alert, I realized it's a message coming from 16 international data protection and privacy regulators. They laid out expectations for social media companies about how they can better protect personal information. One of the issues is that social media companies themselves need to put up protections from outside scrapers so that they can detect bots and block IP addresses when data scraping activity is identified. Meanwhile, a handful of U.S. House representatives have reached out to major social media platforms, including Meta and TikTok, to ask about their strategies for preventing the spread of violence and threats to public safety in the lead up and aftermath of the election. The letter requests information on emergency preparedness measures and lessons learned from past elections. So what else do you need to know? Well, lots, but all I'm going to say is JP Morgan got a big fine from the SEC, $151 million. They failed in their disclosures to customers and also their execution of what they promised to investors. So for example, in the offering documents for one of the products, customers were told, among other things, that such sales may not immediately follow the distribution, but would occur as promptly as practical under reasonable commercial terms. But contrary to these disclosures, they actively managed the shares with complete discretion as to when to sell, but would hold the shares for several months without disclosing it. The SEC felt this exposed the investors to unexpected market risk, so don't do that. And that's it this week for RegAlytics. We have the global supply chain of the world's regulatory alerts in one very easy to use place. If you need a solution for anything related to regulation, give us a call.